Hi everyone, this is Victor from crushcrypto.com. Today I'm with Neeraj Murarka, CTO of Bluzelle, and welcome.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yes.
Yeah, so we've been covering Bluzelle since Bluzelle's ICO in January this year.
Yes.
And yeah, we've been a big fan of the project. And for those who are not as familiar with the project, could you talk a little bit about what Bluzelle is? And actually, I know that you guys have a blockchain-related company before Bluzelle, so it'll be interesting to walk through the history of that company and Bluzelle.
Sure. So we started Bluzelle in 2014, actually here in Vancouver, Canadian company, and myself and my co-founder Pavel, we were looking at a pain point, which was sending money back to India, for Indians sending money home to their family, and that was a very expensive. Western Union, bank transfers, all that. It doesn't work. It's slow. We know all the problems. So we decided to use Ripple technology. Ripple, as we know, the crypto space is a very popular company. So we were actually partnered with Ripple, building a Canadian dollar gateway that would allow people to send money back to India. That was our core business when we started. We're still running that gateway, but we've actually discovered there's a lot of regulatory issues. India has some pretty tight capital controls on money coming into India, and there's a lot of logistical problems. So we we've kind of changed the nature of the business a bit. We moved the company to Singapore in 2016, and that's where we're headquartered. Engineering's all done here in Vancouver. But in Singapore, we've been doing a lot of work with enterprise, and we built a KYC POC, so a Know Your Customer Proof of Concept project with 3 banks, MUFG, HSBC, and OCBC. And that was all running on Ethereum. So we were using Ethereum as the back end for our KYC system. So banks could onboard a customer, and that same customer now has the freedom to move around very quickly. They don't have to spend weeks or hours doing paperwork. We discovered there that there was an inherent weakness in the whole blockchain ecosystem. There's no database. There's no decentralized, powerful, scalable database. Ethereum is not a database, it's a blockchain, and we're slowly discovering that, and that's something we can talk about. So we wrote the white paper for Bluzelle in 2017, and we did our ICO, as you know, in January, and that's what our team is focused on right now, is building that database, a key value store database that's not just for blockchain developers, it's for anyone that wants a better database.
Right. But isn't storing data on a blockchain like really expensive and slow?
It's many things. I mean, if you think about what you store on Ethereum, or in Bitcoin for that matter, the data sits there forever. It's not going to go away in a month or a year, and that has a cost. There's a cost of storing that data forever. So, yeah, I mean, it's slow. You have to wait for confirmations. That's just the nature of how blockchains work. And you have to be paying the cost of storing data there. Now, most of the data that people work with in today's time is highly transient. You probably won't need that data 10 years from now, not to mention having private data on customers on a blockchain is actually quite a risky endeavor considering all the new privacy laws that are coming in. So the short story is you need a database that will allow you to remove the data later, but still has all the benefits of blockchain, and it's not as expensive.
Right.
So
it's kind of a related question, but how do you think Bluzelle is important to the blockchain ecosystem, or how is Bluzelle unique in this space?
It's a needed segment in the whole blockchain industry, and I don't like to say the blockchain industry, because to me it's actually a bigger picture than just blockchain. It's about decentralized technologies that are powered by blockchain, but also non-blockchain technologies. Ripple is not blockchain, for example. They're actually a ledger.
Or like distributed ledger.
Yeah, distributed ledgers, blockchain, many things. Bluzelle itself is using Swarm technology. We're not strictly speaking of blockchain. So to answer your question, there is a need for a database to complement the smart contracts and all those other platforms. So for example, if I were to build a KYC product today, I would still use Ethereum. I would store the fingerprints and the hash data for all the customers on Ethereum. But the lion's share of the data, I would actually store it onto Bluzelle, because I would need that database. And of course, I would need the ability to change that data or remove that data tomorrow if I'm requested to, or, et cetera, et cetera.
Could you do explain it? I'm 13 level of
how a blockchain works?
No, how Bluzelle works.
Oh, yeah. So, we've got a decentralized network, and what is that? That's just people all over the world that have computers that they're running, their laptops, their desktops, maybe even their phones someday. And these devices are running, they're not doing anything, they're idling. So what we do is we give you the ability to run our software on your device. And now what you're doing is you're renting out, almost like an Airbnb, you're renting out space in your machine to our network. and you now become a tiny piece of our network. And our network is a database. So all these different pieces are now storing fragments of the data on our database. We call them shards. And now, why would you even do this? Why would you bother to run the software? Well,
because there's incentive to do it?
Correct. So, yeah, so the token that we launched in our ICO, that token is what we call them farmers in our case, because you're basically like cultivating the data into your so-called field, metaphorically. Right. So you earn tokens for storing that data. You also earn tokens every time somebody goes back and says, hey, Victor, give me my data. Give me this key value pair data. As soon as you give it back to them, you're providing them a service. You're earning some crypto for it.
Got it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you guys not even are not just working within the blockchain space. So is it fair to say that you guys are blockchain agnostic? So are you guys built on top of any particular blockchain, or you guys are compatible with really any blockchain?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually one of the most common questions to come up. So to be very clear, we're not built on a blockchain. Everything we're building from the network stack up is all custom for the database, and we decided to make certain decisions, like whether to use an existing database that's already out there versus building our own, also versus using existing ledger technology versus going our own. And we discovered that if we really want to make a scalable database that's going to last long term, it has to be done properly. So we're blockchain agnostic because we don't use a blockchain. We're not a blockchain. And in fact, the integrations we've already built with blockchains were literally connectors that allow a blockchain to talk to our technology. And we're doing the same with non-blockchains. So for example, we're building integrations with programming languages like Python, C++, C#, JavaScript. We're building all these adapters so that developers who may not even be using blockchain can use our database just like they're already doing.
Got it. And as you said, you guys did the ICO early this year. So since your ICO, like what are some of the major milestone or achievements that you guys have accomplished?
Yeah, so we, I've got this shirt, I don't know if it's visible, but we've got the names of all our releases on here. It's a crossword puzzle. So every one of our releases is named after a prominent scientist. The first release that came out at the end of June this year was called Lovelace, after Ada Lovelace. And that was a test net that allowed developers to go in and store data. There's no cost to using it right now. There's no crypto economics turned on yet. And obviously the network's very rough. It's early. So, the network could get reset. You could lose your data. Obviously, it's a test net. We're coming out with our next release at the end of 2018, so in about 2 months and change. It's called the Bernoulli release, after Daniel Bernoulli. And this release will have additional improvements like PBFT, which is the consensus protocol. But another very important thing we're adding there is permissioning. So right now, the way the testnet is, it's kind of a free-for-all. It's the Wild West. If you go and store data in there, I can go in and overwrite your data. It's not protected. There's no write protection. Right. So what we're going to have at the end of this year is write protection, so that your data, even though it's not private and I can read your data, nobody can corrupt your data. It belongs to you, which is actually a really important step, because we've got customers that have come to us and said, hey, I want to publish financial reports or financial data. Now, that data is open to the public, but the public has to trust that that data hasn't been corrupted by a third party. So that's an important step. That's Bernoulli. And then every 6 months we come out with a release. So 2019, end of June, we're going to have the Curie release after Marie Curie, and that's when our mainnet comes out.
I see. Yes. Got it. And so you guys, the testnet has been released, and is the project open source right now?
Absolutely. Brian Fox, as some people might know, is one of our advisors, a very important advisor of ours, and he's one of the earliest employees of the Free Software Foundation, which is kind of the foundation for the whole free software movement and open source. So he's been advising us. Obviously, I'm a big advocate of that technology, and we also have been able to get a hold of Richard Stallman, who helps us out with a lot of advisory, although he's not officially an advisor. So the short answer is yes, we follow the AGPL v3 license, which is very similar to regular other open source licenses. That basically says you want to take our code, you can take it, you can modify it, you can run your own servers, but if you're running any kind of server technology, you still have to release the source code back to the public. So it's an additional improvement to the regular open source licenses that didn't account for this whole new software as a service paradigm we have now.
Got it.
Yeah.
And for because your project has been released since early this year, so I'm just wondering about the community building side. Like, I know that you guys headquartered in Singapore and also have a team here in Canada. But how do you plan to grow your community globally?
Great question. So we've already had 2 hackathons. We had one in 2017, and then we had one in April of 2018. So
Where was it held?
they were both held in Vancouver. So
Okay.
we're looking to do one probably in Seoul.
Okay.
Or somewhere in Europe to do, to get a really good community of developers. So that's one way where we've gotten developers to come in. In fact, one of our hires came out from a hackathon, and actually one of the startups here in Vancouver came about as a result of one of our hackathons. So we've had some great success there. Myself and my business partner, Powell, we both do a lot of meetups. We go around the world at conferences. We hold workshops to train people, to get them educated. One of the things that I'm really focused on is not limiting Bluzelle's database to just the blockchain environment, the blockchain industry. We definitely have fantastic partnerships in the blockchain space, obviously companies like Zilliqa and Icon, but, I'm looking at, a large chunk of software developers out there that don't work in the blockchain space. They're working for Microsoft. They're building indie games. They're building mobile apps. I'm looking to get all those developers onboarded, and that's why I go to a lot of traditional developer events and talk to them about Bluzelle as a better database, not as a crypto database, just as a superior database that offers benefits that no incumbent database can offer.
Got it. And I actually wanted to ask you about the business side. Like, how do you plan to make Bluzelle more accessible and more people know about the Bluzelle platform, so that more dApps or more transaction programs can be integrated with Bluzelle? So
there's a couple of ways we're going to be doing that. I mean, one of the things that we did in our ICO is we kept aside a pool of tokens specifically for ecosystem and for developers. So once our mainnet comes up, no promises, but we'll have some sort of program where if you're a developer, you can get a stipend of tokens to get started on the mainnet. The testnet's obviously always there. But, one of the other ways is really integrations. I don't really believe in going and knocking on doors to get people to use our database. I believe more in the bundling strategy, where, you go in and you're a developer and you need to build this whole app. It has to have a network stack. It has to have a database. It has to have all these different pieces. And you get a package, a bundle, and that bundle includes Bluzelle. So that's how you get started. You get the developers really at the early point when they're starting their development and they're seeking out all the technologies, and Bluzelle becomes the go-to database in that respect.
Right. So within that bundle, what other kind of software does it include?
You would have, for a lot of these are optional, like a CDN, for example, or P2P discovery, or file storage. Bluzelle stores data. You also probably want to have a decentralized file storage that may be built upon IPFS or Storage A or something. So it's really about providing that entire solution bundle to a developer so they can just take that, download it, and away they go. Developers don't want to spend days or hours trying to figure out all the different parts. They want a kit where they can just build an application quickly and focus on what they're interested in. So that's an approach I'm trying to take. We have a plan to have Bluzelle integrated into existing developer environments like Xcode or Microsoft Visual Studio, so that, or Heroku, where when you go on there, you just click on a button and boom, you've got the database ready to go.
Right.
There's no setup process. It's very simple. That's really key to getting adoption. So sure. I think it's not a direct approach. It's more about Bluzelle just being so available and convenient that developers use it.
Got it. And what kind of use case do you see Bluzelle being adopted? Like what industry or what kind of applications do you foresee will be the first kind of wave of application that uses integrate with Bluzelle?
I would say, Bluzelle uses a mix of things like, decentralized, obviously torrent-like technology for storing the data. And because we have nodes all over the place, there's a bit of a CDN performance benefit. So I would see a lot of value, especially to companies that want to have a global presence, where they want to have their data available regardless of where in the world you are, and where they have scale, where they cannot predict what scale they're going to have. They want to have that just-in-time scalability. So two of the key things that we provide is performance and scalability. Reliability and scalability. Reliability and scalability. So reliability is something developers always talk about. They want absolute reliability. They don't want to worry about backups. They don't want to worry about a tsunami taking out their data center, anything like that. And then they also want to make sure that if they have an overnight success, their website doesn't crash. They want to make sure it scales. So Bluzelle provides all that. And there's obviously, sectors like e-commerce, anything that's B2C, where they have these unknowns, are going to benefit from this sort of infrastructure.
Right. And last question for you, Neeraj. Where do you see Bluzelle 1 year as well as 5 years from now?
1 year from now, we're still gonna be, working with crypto companies a lot in the fashion that we are, and we're gonna be still building up our database, quite frankly, because our roadmap is about 2 years to build up the Bluzelle database to the point where, we kind of feel it's got most of the core features and feature complete. So in the next year, I see that we're onboarding a lot of more early adopters. We're still in the process of building all these integrations with all these different developer platforms, blockchain and non-blockchain. 5 years from now, I look at us as a database company. We are, obviously this is an ideal, but we are the de facto key value store document database. We're competing directly with companies like Redis or Mongo. But we've got the advantage that we're completely decentralized. We as Bluzelle don't run any servers. The world runs the servers, and we're there making sure that we're that company backing everything, providing commercial support and obviously value-added services. But you have this database now that's really leveraging the best of decentralized and blockchain technology.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's great having you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.